I'm Colin O'Keefe, and this is LXBN TV. Joining me today, upon recently returning from the 34th Annual International Conference of Data Protection and Privacy Commissioners down in Uruguay, is one of the world's foremost authorities when it comes to privacy law, Christopher Wolf of Hogan Lovells and their blog, Chronicle of Data Protection. Chris, first, you discussed this in your remarks at the event's opening plenary session. Just how close or far apart are the U.S. and the EU when it comes to privacy and data security?
Well, first, thanks for your nice introduction. And I ought to say we were very close together in Uruguay, because when we arrived, we were subjected to a cyclone, which was, I guess, good preparation for Hurricane Sandy when we came home. But we were basically confined to the hotel for a day or a day and a half. So we had kind of forced closeness, which was a good setup for my remarks about how close together the world really is when it comes to the recognition of the importance of privacy, but how far apart in certain respects they are in terms of how to address the issue of bettering privacy for individuals. And so I talked about how in the EU there is a rather prescriptive approach to the regulation of privacy and a pretty substantial disdain for self-regulation, as opposed to the United States, where self-regulation is part of our framework as long as it has an enforcement mechanism behind it, and that typically is the Federal Trade Commission or state attorneys general. So I highlighted those differences during the program and tried to bridge that gap by suggesting there are ways to make the systems interoperable and to have more cross-border transfers facilitated.
Definitely. And second, what other major trends and talking points did you see in your time at the event?
One of the big issues, one of the things that was discussed a lot in the meetings and also in the hallways, had to do with international cooperation among the regulators in enforcement. I think it was 2 years ago that the Global Privacy Enforcement Network was announced, with the FTC participating and a fairly large group of countries now involved in that. But we've seen recently bilateral agreements, such as the one between Germany and Canada, for cooperation in enforcement. And what that means for multinational corporations, and in particular US-based corporations that operate internationally, is that there's going to be sharing of information and investigations, and the Data Protection Authority, with the strictest regime, may use information that would not amount to an enforceable action in the home jurisdiction to go after that country abroad. That's somewhat problematic in terms of predictability and knowing what to expect in the way of legal restrictions. But on the other hand, obviously, every international company needs to be aware of what the rules are around the world. So that's one takeaway that I had from the meeting, that there's going to be an increased focus on enforcement, something that's been a hallmark of the U.S. Framework for quite some time. And then kind of at the other end of the spectrum is a recognition that we need greater interoperability. We need greater mechanisms for harmonizing the different frameworks that do exist. I was impressed by Josh Harris from the U.S. Department of Commerce, who spoke at a panel that I moderated for the Public Voice, which was a side event of civil society that preceded the Data Protection Authority Conference, who talked about the APEC cross-border enforcement arrangement, which allows for third-party certification of the privacy practices of countries that are operating across borders. That's just getting started. The U.S., I think, is the only signatory to it, but it's a framework that's available and could set the standard for the interoperability that was talked about.
Again, that was Christopher Wolf of Hogan Lovells and their blog, Chronicle of Data Protection. For more of his insight, rare opportunity to get insight from somebody who is, you're actively involved in this type of stuff. Visit hldataprotection.com, and for more from the LexBlog Network's thriving community of privacy lawyers, visit the Privacy and Data Security section at lxbn.com. Thank you, Chris.
Colin, thank you.